Hello, and welcome to the Block Explorer. I'm Colin Brightfield.
Hey folks, I'm Cash Upton.
The Block Explorer is here to educate and inspire you about the world of crypto and NFTs.
We'll do deep dives into critical concepts for understanding what's happening and discuss the current events shaping the space.
We're making this podcast for the curious, the free thinkers, and the change makers that propel us forward.
As we embark on our adventures, remember that none of this is financial advice and crypto can be risky.
In this episode, we discuss how creativity is evolving with the innovations happening in the Web3 and NFT space with seasoned and savvy designer, Dom Moreci. Dom, it's great to have you on the podcast today. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This is exciting.
We know you've been in the design space for a while and have worked on a lot of really fascinating, amazing projects, including Bottle Rock. And we want to just get a background on your design journey and how did you get into design and what's your background?
Sure. So my background is actually traditional graphic design. I got out of school way too long ago, and I started working for a design and branding firm in the city, doing production art and as a junior packaging designer. And then my boss bought me one of the only 2 books on HTML written at the time, and we went to the first web conference, and I then ended up teaching myself HTML, which you could do back then on a yellow pad as I took the bus back and forth to my mom's house at night. And then I built the first website for that studio back in like 1993. So that kind of makes me a granddad in the web industry. And then from there, I went to another design firm to start the interactive design department while also working on packaging design and things like the updated blue Pepsi can, for example, all Intel packaging, that kind of stuff. And so I was sort of thrown into the world thrown into a situation in which I would be bringing traditional brands on board to the web space back then and trying to teach them how to reinterpret their brand online, which was, super new and different. And then from there, I worked for a .com for a while called CompareNet. And then I started my own company on my own in 1999. And I've been on my own ever since.
You mentioned that you kind of started off by bringing traditional companies from traditional media spaces kind of online. Do you see some parallels with that process now with what's happening with the migration of Web 2 to Web 3?
Yeah, I really do. This is 1993 all over again, only much faster and with much smarter people. It's just, I think there's a huge opportunity for small brands to get a foothold in this new space in terms of brand building and engagement, consumer outreach, that kind of thing. And I think this whole NFT world or metaverse is really pretty exciting. I will say that back in the old days when the web happened, I was, pretty starry-eyed, and I kind of thought, oh, this is great. It's going to democratize everything, and small mom and pop shops will be able to sell their goods. I was pretty naive, and then realized that money makes the world go around, and so if you have a lot of money behind you, you can get more eyeballs on your product, and you're going to beat the small mom and pop. So I think hopefully we've learned from that a little bit, and smaller brands can, do it differently this time. But I definitely see a parallel from then to now for sure.
Yeah, you bring up a good point with the internet at the beginning, having all these starry-eyed propositions. Colin and I just did an episode on digital scarcity and how NFTs can help unlock digital goods in a way that formerly couldn't be done before blockchain technology. So you want to just respond to that a little bit? Like, what's your experience with the NFT space so far, in terms of what that could bring to creators?
Yeah, well, I'll say, first of all, what's super cool is how incredibly creative people are, and what people are doing is really pretty outstanding. And in the sort of the in real life brick and mortar side of things, I'm starting to see people try to connect NFTs to real world experiences, real world products. I'm working on a wine label right now that's going to be NFT'd, and getting people to understand how that can, create community and engagement, evangelical brand loyal followers around that. I'm thinking that there's just it's hard to even pinpoint it because there's just so much opportunity and it's moving so fast. I mean, every day we hear about another big brand going online. Nike and Adidas and Walmart or whoever. It's just people are just starting to get into it, but it's just overwhelming how fast it's all moving.
One of the critiques that people have is kind of what you just kind of described with Web 2 and how it's kind of dominated now, these massive companies, Google, Facebook, Apple, and so it's kind of like the comparison of TV in like the 1960s or something, where you just have like a couple channels and most of the content is governed by those channels. You have the YouTube channel, you have the Facebook channel, whatever. And now Web3 is letting the internet be more independent, kind of created, and a little more weird again. Yeah. And would you agree with that statement? And what do you think about that?
Yeah, it's definitely make the web weird again for sure. Is the theme. Yeah, I mean, look, if we're being realistic, right? The big brands are going to come in, they're going to throw a bunch of money behind their NFT projects or whatever, or their metaverse real estate, and they're going to drive traffic, blah, 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 blah. They're going to throw all that money in there. And it's really going to be interesting to see what happens in the next year or two to the small projects, to the small creators, to the small teams and groups who want to do something new or create some new tech. I really, really hope that what I've felt about the NFT space so far, and I've only been in it for a few months, really. I mean, literally October, I was like, what the hell's an NFT? I had no idea. Why would anybody want to buy a JPEG online? It was one of those. And within like a week, I'm like, I need to buy all these JPEGs online. Like I need all of them. I was so converted so quickly. But I think what I've really enjoyed about the space so far is, for the most part, people are super supportive. There's a lot of shady promoters and shady characters. I was just taken for $400 recently, which sucked, but there's a lot of shady characters, but there's a lot of people who want to offer support, and a lot of small projects, I think, can band together and make more noise for themselves and get more attention. But I do think we have to be realistic about that. And it will be interesting to see, as I said, how the small NFT community comes together to battle against the interests of the big giant companies. I think there's place in the metaverse, since it's kind of infinite. There's space for everybody, big brands on down. But I think it will be really interesting to see how the public responds to the big brands. I mean, Adidas did an amazing job recently, and they got a huge boost out of that. I think for big brands, it's going to be about really just creating engagement with their community and being authentic and being transparent. But I really do hope that the small players in this world stick together and kind of push against the big corporate interests that will eventually try to infiltrate it.
So how did you come to the NFT space originally? And then you said you got converted in like a week. So I'm curious, what was that conversion like, and what was the arguments for and against that made you go down the rabbit hole completely?
The hardest part for me to understand was okay. So a buddy of mine who I hadn't seen in a long time called me and said, "Hey man, do you know anything about this NFT stuff?" I'm like, "No, it's like crypto something," which is the standard answer that everybody gives, right? And he said, "Oh yeah, I have this buddy, did this project. He's sold out. He's making all this money. He's doing all this great art. He's then, giving back to charity and doing these concerts and all this stuff." And I was like, okay, cool, let's investigate. So I started really looking into it, and I started seeing these generative NFT projects. And it really clicked for me because it's like silk screening, or in printing, you can do something called sequential printing or variable image printing, things like that. I really understood how it all worked right away from a art perspective. And then we said, "Oh well, let's try something. Let's just do something fun, like 100 or 200 piece little collection, so I can figure out how this all works." And so we ended up creating this little character that I used to draw when I was a kid, and we're going to use it as a test, and it's now ballooned into something huge. So it was really, I mean, it was really fast for me. And now, I was like dreaming about NFTs. It was ridiculous. The hardest part for me has been, connecting my wallet, funding it, convincing my wife that this is a good idea. That's like the hardest part for most people, convincing their spouses that this is something they should be doing. And, having analogies like, owning an NFT is like owning stock, or, I try to explain to people, an NFT, imagine owning a piece of art that has a specific serial number attached to it. It's kind of try to come up with different, analogies for this. But like I said, it was a pretty fast conversion for me. And now I'm kind of all in. Like I haven't been excited about design in a long, long time. I've been doing it for lots of people and happy to help with their projects, do their wine labels, do their packages. But this has really got me energized in a way that I haven't been in a long time.
Yeah, we're really excited for your NFT project too. That's one of the reasons why we also want to get you on, because it's going to be launching on 2/22/22, and it's called Crypto Cones. And can you tell our audience a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so Crypto Cones NFT is a project based on, like I said, a doodle I've been drawing since I was probably 7 years old of this little cone character. And it's really, really rooted in my youth, in retro late 70s, 80s, and some of the 90s pop culture. So, for example, all the cones have hand-drawn traits. One section of the traits are these sunglasses or eyeglasses, and they're all legit. So there's like Kurt Cobain wore these really cool white, thick-rimmed glasses. Those are in there. Famous shutter shades from the 80s that Kanye West wears now or wore now. Those are in there. Tony Montana's glasses are in there. Risky Business Ray-Bans are in there. And then there's outfits that are pulled from either directly from 80s characters like Ducky Dale in Pretty in Pink, his outfit, or Tyler Durden in Fight Club in the 90s. And then other things that we just used to wear like puffer vests and, and then I'm also a big t-shirt and jeans kind of a guy, and logo t-shirts. Graphic tees are sort of my life. So I did a whole series of graphic tees, and I wanted them to have logos of things that I liked when I was a kid, like Star Wars, for example. But I'm super sensitive to the IP issues around, using these things. And NFT projects are full of just copyright infringement. It's just, there's so many people doing so many things. And I'm not saying dressing up your little kitty in a Spider-Man outfit is the wrong thing to do. I'm just saying doing that and then putting a Marvel logo on its chest is a really bad idea. Cool for the short term, but might screw you in the long term, I think. So I decided to redo a bunch of logos and make it look like they were all cone based. So in a cone universe, only cones exist. So there's no TV program called Cheers. It's called Cones, but the logo looks similar. So try to get around it that way, and doing, just trying to bring in some fun and nostalgia, do something different that isn't an ape. Nothing wrong with apes. Nothing wrong with CryptoPunks. Those are all amazing. But everywhere I look, there's either a derivative project of something that exists or a cute little animal avatar. All of those things, again, I want all of them. So, throwing no shade at all. Everything has value, in my opinion. I just wanted to do something different that was kind of, fun and interesting and kind of silly and have some connection to our roots. That launches on the 22nd, and CryptoConesNFT.com. You have to have the NFT in there, is where we can find.
Cool. And it's going for one soul to mint?
Yeah. One soul. Right.
Was there a big decision-making process in choosing the Solana network?
Yeah, I think the gas fees on ETH on Ethereum are just too high, and we wanted to make it attainable. We wanted to make a project that dads like me could buy and then gift to their kids in their wallets without it costing a bunch of money. I really hope people own a collection of these. I like Funko Pop, little bobbleheads. I love those things. I've always loved them, and I kind of wanted to do something that was like that. I buy them for my kids, I buy them for myself. But Sol was a conscious decision to go to Sol. The projects are it's not quite as saturated. The market's not saturated like it is with Ethereum right now.
Yeah, well, Colin and I both got on the whitelist, so we're excited for the drop.
Yeah, I saw that. That's really cool. Thanks for
You
that.
had some really cool plans with your CryptoCones NFT drop, and then the future drops and future additions to the whole project and ecosystem. So, I don't want you to give away all your secrets, but can you give us a little hint of what are some of the other things that you have down the road?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem I have is I have too many ideas. And I have a little notebook that I've had just in the last couple months that probably has 30 ideas for projects in it. But what I really decided to do is to focus us on retro projects, something that we're calling the retrosphere. So I'm in the process of building our own website for Retrosphere Labs, but that's the entity behind all these retro projects. So CryptoCones NFT phase 1 will unlock phase 2, which will have all new outfits, all new glasses, all new everything. And those will unlock the next project, which is, let's see, how do I tease it? It's going to be based on a retro vehicle, but I'm going to do it in pixel art. I've always wanted to do that, little animated pixel art, and a series of these retro vehicles that you customize. And if we can do well on that, then I'm going to look for a game developer to build a casual gaming version of that, a la, Missile Command and Pole Position back from the 80s. I think it'd be really fun to do that. After that, we're going to do a whole series of different audio devices that are retro, is what I'll say. And I have some musician friends, and we're going to do some original music for those. It's going to be great. I'm super excited about all the fun stuff we're going to do that all builds upon each other, but stays within this retro theme. Because I think, Gen X kids like me are a, big population right now that's getting more and more into NFTs. Gen Z, absolutely. Millennials, absolutely. 80s are sort of cool again. And then, my kids who are Gen Z kids, they like all the 80s stuff because I force them to listen to it and watch all those movies all the time. I just feel like that's one thing that's missing is, thematic projects. It's either apes or things like that. And it kind of continues to grow along that path. But I like the idea of doing a bunch of different projects, but all that fit within kind of a theme and an attitude and aesthetic.
Yeah, that's a really good point because you mentioned some of these other NFT projects that, like the apes, they did the Mutant Apes was a spin-off of that project, and they had the Bored Ape Kennel Club. So that if you had an ape, then you could also mint a dog that went with it. And they also had the actual yachts that you can get. And Cool Cats are now dropping a Cool Cat Pets, which are minting soon, I think. And those are getting a lot of hype. There is this kind of precedent of having a project and then having like spin-offs or additions to it. But I think what you're doing is a little bit different. And I like it because you're saying, okay, well, we're going to work within this theme, this world almost, and we're going to populate this retrosphere world with a bunch of different projects that relate to each other and can be composable eventually, right? You could have different interactions between the different projects. So I really like what you're doing there. You mentioned the gen art thing is what really spoke to you. So can you touch on that a little bit more about what was it about the generative art when you came into NFTs that really grabbed you, and what makes that special?
Oh my gosh, the math. And I'm terrible at math. But when somebody told me, we were talking to somebody in the very beginning of this whole project, who's doing a different project now that's super cool. But he said something like a 5x5 grid, 5 traits, 5 attributes in each trait lends you like something ridiculous, a million items. I was like, holy cow. So our grid is massive. I've got, including easy stuff like backgrounds, I've got, 8 different trait categories, and some of them have 15, some have 30, some have 20 different elements in it. And the combinations just like astounding. So we ran a test of CryptoCones and 5,500. And I was like, whoa, there's combinations in here I didn't even consider. Like, wow, that's super cool. And I worked really hard to try to make sure all the traits would line up so that you wouldn't have a lot of clashing, a lot of weirdness, you know what I mean? But everything would not line up, it would work together, And I just thought that was super cool because you're creating the individual elements And then an algorithm is going to pump out all these variations of your art in ways that you may not have ever considered. And I thought that was really, really cool. And that an individual can mint one crypto cone or one, whatever, and get something totally unique. That to me is just super exciting. And to think that way when you're designing is really, really hard. But luckily I've done it before, when I've done, wine labels and things like that. And you try to think about a whole line of products that has to be created. So I've always kind of been thinking that way. But the other thing that was exciting for me, to be honest, is that, I've spent almost 30 years. Oh, I can't believe I just said that out loud. 30 years designing stuff for other people. And I've never, ever been able to just do something that I wanted to do. And if it didn't look good, it was up to me to fix it, or it's up to me to end it and say, yes, this is good enough, or that's the color that I want. So this for me I don't even want to call myself an artist. I'm a designer. As a designer, this was really liberating for me. And I think that's part of what I think is so cool about NFTs in general is it's giving a voice to all these artists who have thoughts and ideas. And they finally have a venue, in which they can show their art and show their talent. And that to me is like so exciting.
I love it. I would call you an artist after I've seen your crypto cones. You got some really cool line work, and yeah, you're crushing it. How many will there be for mint, by the way?
5,500.
5,500. Mm-hmm. You mentioned earlier a project with a wine label. Without giving too much away, how are you doing the in real life NFT hybrid? With that sort of application.
Probably with dynamically generated QR codes on the back labels. And those back labels or the QR codes will link a buyer up to a particular site in which they can register or mint their wine. It's really in its infancy now, but I'm starting to I live in Napa, California. So, I'm just starting to get hear this happening a little bit with people. I was just talking to a printer. Today, and she was saying, yeah, absolutely. Like that's something that she's getting calls for. So it'll be interesting. I really, really am interested in how this is going to work. And I think the trick with brands and companies, whether you make shoes or you make wine or whatever, is that it's not about sales online. It's not about selling online. It's about building community online and creating, for example, a company can do, say, let's say a winery, for example, again, just because that's the industry I'm closest to right now. A winery can NFT 2 barrels of wine, make however many cases that is. I should know that, but however many that is. And each bottle can have, a unique code or be connected to the blockchain, right? Have its own token. And then whoever buys those wines can get invited to special live events. So concerts or tastings or, special pre-sale things that they can get access to great wine and do all this cool stuff. And that to me is really where the gold is going to be for brands, is to how to engage your base in a way that you couldn't before. Wineries have wine clubs, right? That's great. You get your wine every month or whatever. But this is something totally different, where you have this kind of like small group of people who are really evangelical about your product, and you can engage them directly and give them access to events. That will end up selling more wine and building that brand. It's not about, a direct one-to-one e-commerce play. It's about engaging that group and turning them into, like I said, evangelists for your product.
Yeah, you make a really good point. I mean, there's this article that was written on a while ago called 1,000 True Fans by Kevin Kelly, which you might be familiar with. It's the whole idea that as a creator online, if you have 1,000 people who are your fan, on average, they spend $100 or so a year on your products, then you can make a decent living as a creator. And now there's another thinker in the space named Lee Jin, and she talks about the next evolution of this with what's happening with NFTs is now you actually only need 100 true fans or 100 super fans.
Yeah.
Because you can engage them in a much more legitimate way, and you can create more value for those specific people who have the biggest affinity for you.
Yeah, and I mean, I think what also is cool is, I know a guy who's got an NFT project called Cyber Panther Party. Cyber Panther Party. Have you heard of them?
No, but I love the name.
It's like the Black Panther Party, but Cyber Panther Party, and he's connecting all his stuff to civil rights causes. And so I love the idea. Like I don't know if you heard of Sacred Skulls. They're another one. Super cool art, all woman based, project, women led project, I should say. They're doing things that are actually connected to real events. Cyber Panthers are doing really cool stuff I was actually on a Twitter Spaces with them talking about issues around race. And I was blown away by how much I learned in a half-hour Twitter Spaces discussion with this group of people who are passionate about this cause. And we all should be passionate about civil rights. So I mean, I'm loving how there's multiple facets to this now. It's not just about selling product. It's not about just selling NFTs and making money. It's about, building, like I said, building community. I can't say that enough. Building community around causes, building community around art, all that stuff is really, really inspiring.
Yeah, really cool. This Cyber Panther project. We're gonna have to check them out more and maybe even get them on the podcast, because we totally embrace that force of social and environmental good that can come from
NFTs. I know you do.
Blockchain.
It's a cool project, and he's doing great stuff. So,
what other creative opportunities do you see with NFTs? Just like broadly speaking, coming to the space.
Well, and this will resonate with you guys, of course, but I'm really, really excited about how NFTs, non-art based NFTs, but how NFTs can be used for events. And I think that's super cool. After creating Bottle Rock back in 2013 and then working on 2014 and then going to it all the time because it's literally 6 blocks from my house. It happened 6 blocks from my house. RFID, remember when RFID technology kind of started and people were like, what? Nobody's going to wear a wristband, to do this. And then I think I went to a Coldplay concert and they gave you RFID wristbands that lit up and synced with the music. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. That was, 10 years ago, 8 years ago. And now like RFID is just sort of literally cost of entry. Like you have to be RFID to go into these events so that they can deal with things like crowd movement and all that stuff and tracking of people and security and, eliminating or trying to eliminate, fraudulent ticketing or scalping, that kind of stuff. And I think NFTs, watching NFTs become a part of that experience is really exciting and cool. And I love the idea that it kind of cuts out the middleman. And especially with musicians, I watched this one video of this kid. I don't know who he is. I forgot his name, but some rapper teenage rapper guy in, I think, Canada or someplace. And he sold all his music. He sold his albums for $1, the equivalent of $1 in crypto. And he sold out in like 15 minutes and, sold 1 million copies. So I'm like, wow, that's so cool how it's going to change that paradigm altogether. Again, poets, writers. My daughter does these amazing spray paint stencil pieces. They're all, in my garage right now. And I'm going to put them up as NFTs at some point, getting exposure for people like that. Or doing videos. In the 80s when videos happened and everybody thought, oh, this is stupid, this is terrible. The powers that be thought this was a terrible medium. And then all of a sudden they were doing video awards, Video Vanguard Awards for people pushing that medium. So, I mean, I think, live events, ticketing, music, fine art, all that stuff, it's going to be really cool to see how all this explodes even more as the general public starts to pay attention.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we're really excited for the music side of things too, just because, like you said, the direct benefits to the artists, being able to make weird music again too, and not be reliant on what's the poppy thing that's going to be picked up by the labels. So we actually just released our latest episodes on NFT music. So definitely encourage our listeners to check that out too. And then there's just, kind of offhandedly, but off topic a little bit, but there's just an NPR on Freakonomics came out a few days ago talking about the fine art industry and a lot of the bottlenecks that are partially self-induced by the fine art industry itself, but something upwards of 90% of fine art is locked away in these storage houses and not actually visible to the public. So like that's the whole, art for art's sake, people actually seeing these things, and just the exposure that can get, happening to up and coming artists is really cool.
I think what's going to be interesting too is to watch how people use their NFTs in real life. When we put our crypto cones out there and you buy your crypto cone, you can take your crypto cone and you can make a t-shirt, you can put it on a water bottle, you can make a giant stick, you can paint your car with it if you want to. I'll have no rights to that piece of art anymore. And so that's
cool. So you're giving the IP to the crypto cone holder.
And in some ways that's kind of liberating because you're just giving it out. And you hope people don't do stupid things with it, right? Or, do negative things with it, but you can't control that. And I think that's really interesting. I've been watching people take their Bored Apes and do all kinds of crazy stuff with their Bored Apes, and I'm waiting for the day that somebody paints a Lamborghini that they bought with the sales of one Bored Ape and they paint it with their other Bored Ape. You know what I mean? Like, right. It's crazy to think about what's going to happen. And in some ways, it's scary. I think that traditional fine artists will have a hard time with that. At the same time, like, as you just said, like, why, as a collector of fine art, I'm going to put up my beautiful fine art piece that I paid $30,000 for or whatever, and I'm going to hang it in my living room, and only maybe 10 people are ever going to get to see and enjoy it. But an NFT, digital art, can be seen all over the world, all at once, by everyone in theory. And that's pretty amazing. And that, just does nothing for me. It does nothing but elevate the artist. And I mean, I was super excited because Jason Derulo, I guess, liked one of our Instagram posts on crypto cones. And I was like, oh my God, I showed my wife and she was super excited. I'm like, now do you think I'm cool? But it's great that all of a sudden people, see your stuff. And that's really great. It's a nice shot in the arm of confidence to designers like me and artists out there, doing this.
That's amazing. You mentioned a really good point with the IP, and there's a spectrum that exists with the IP for different profile picture collections or different NFT collections, and some kind of do what the Bored Apes do, right? And they kind of on one end of the spectrum where your Bored Ape is your Bored Ape, and you can do whatever you want with it, and you own the IP. And some are kind of more on the opposite end of the spectrum where you don't have any of the IP, and it's kind of part of this collection. You own the piece, but you don't really have the rights to reproduce. And then there's most of the collections that I've come across, they kind of sit somewhere in the middle, right? You might have individual rights for your IP, but you not for your Bored Ape or for your NFT, but you might not have collection rights. So you can do something with your specific Bored Ape, but you might not be able to say that it's an official Bored Ape Yacht Club thing. And I'm not sure if that's the right example for that project, but depending on the project, different projects sit in different places. So to clarify, you're doing crypto cones, you're giving away the IP to the NFT.
Yeah,
owners.
As far as I know, I mean, I have partners, so maybe they say something different. But I think it's like, who cares at that point, And like I said, I would just implore anybody who purchases any NFT to do something positive with it. Enjoy it, print it on canvas and hang it in your room, whatever, do something fun with it. And I think from a collector or from a creator's perspective, all it does is build your brand when people do that. The more you let people do, the more people will want to do with the stuff you sell to them. So it ends up building, music is the same way, there are certain bands that are really, really, careful about protecting their work. And there's other ones that aren't. And if you think of like, there's a particular heavy metal band I won't mention, but in the old days, they used to give their stuff away. And now they're one of the most litigious, bands out there, really protecting their copyright and protecting their brand. And they should, I guess. But, don't forget about how you got there either. You gave stuff away. So it will be really interesting. I think here's my prediction. There will be an entire new field of law that emerges in the next, year or two. And that is basically NFT law. And lawyers will start really, really focusing on these IP issues. And I'm telling you, like, there's just, originally I wanted to do with CryptoCones, I wanted to do, really, really, really specific, I wanted to do the Frankie Say Relax t-shirt. And I did, because that's what everyone was wearing in 85 or whatever. And, I looked it up and turns out that's protected. That's protected material. And you can't just make a shirt that says Frankie Say Relax on it because somebody owns that. So we have to kind of pay homage to it, do something kind of derivative from it, hint at it. But we can't do that thing because eventually somebody's going to come after you. And that's just, I'm not usually that cynical, but I just have seen it before. And I think artists need to be really, really careful about the IP that they swipe.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you're right about that. It's, I think a whole new field of law is going to be developed because of it. So that's kind of like one challenge I think that the NFT community is working on and it has to kind of figure out as time goes on. What would you say maybe some of the other challenges you might see happening in the NFT space in general?
I'm really worried about people getting into the NFT space as from the consumer side, collector side. I'm just thinking about my friends and family, right? Going in there and finding a project and buying a project only to realize later that it's not the original project, it's a knockoff project. That bothers me a bit. And I get it. Like, it's fine. Be inspired by whatever's out there. Find something that you like and then do another version of it. Like, do whatever you want to do. But I do think that there are projects out there that are touting themselves as original and they're not. And that kind of worries me. I think on the other side of things, small projects don't get noticed, and I think that's an issue. As we ramp up here, it's still in its infancy. So you still can get noticed if you're a small project, but it is really, really hard. And unless you have a celebrity behind you or a bunch of influencers or people who are backing your project, unless you have that, it's going to be hard to get seen. And that's going to get tougher and tougher and tougher every week that we go forward in this space. For every new 100 projects, 1,000 projects, maybe one of them has some celebrity eyeballs on it. So the rest of us have to, as I said before, kind of band together. But I think that's the challenge from the creator's perspective. Creator side is how to actually get noticed out there.
That's a good point. We have seen lately there's Saatchi, right, Colin? Is that the marketplace, the art gallery?
It's an art gallery. Yeah, it's a traditional art gallery, but they're breaking into the NFT space by doing a project with 150 artists that are kind of in their umbrella. They're a curation kind of agency.
And they were focusing on a lot of up and coming artists too, to give them the exposure under their umbrella. So maybe that'll be something that is more commonplace, is like a coalition of designers and creators that get under the same project.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see what we'll call kind of a virtual gallery, which sounds like a dated term actually, but a metaverse gallery. That doesn't cost anything to join. I mean, it's like somebody goes through and picks, 10 projects. But if you're that guy, if you're that gallery, how do you find those 10 projects? How do you find them? And how do you vet them? Like that's a full-time job. So it's going to be a challenge. I think it really is going to be hard, for, like I said, these little projects to get noticed. And I really hope that, that gets worked out somehow. Yeah,
definitely an opportunity for a market aggregator of some sort for those smaller projects. What NFT projects are you most excited about or keeping your eye on? Anything that you are really looking forward to?
Well, other than CryptoCones and all my future projects, those are huge. Like I said, Cyber Panthers is really cool. Sacred Skulls, that was a good one. I think Crypto Dads is really funny. If you've seen Crypto Dads, like, good for them. That's so cool. Um, uh, what else? I think anything that doesn't take itself too seriously is one that I'm excited about. Art for art's sake, just fun. These, and I'm talking about generative NFT projects. Other than that, like I haven't been able to spend a lot of time following individual artists, but I will tell you that every day I see something that blows me away that people are doing. Just so cool, some stuff. And I think also there's a space for real, what I'm going to call not real art, but in real life art, like 2D or 3D art that is then photographed or scanned or whatever, and then turned into multiple variations for online. Or an online experience or a digital experience, like that's pretty cool. And I think I'm excited to see a lot of video projects coming out too. But I don't have anything really specific other than the ones that I've mentioned. Like I said, my head's been down every day just trying to get my own project done. But I hope as I get further along in this community, I'm actually able to help other projects succeed and get visibility for other artists too.
Yeah, you speak about, other projects and being an advocate and a supporter, and you're kind of like a trailblazer here. It seems like, as a designer going full bore into the NFT thing. So what kind of conversations are you having with other designers that you're friends with, your peers? What do they think about what you're doing with crypto cones and NFTs?
Well, let's see. It's a lot of it has been around just trying to educate my designer friends. It's so new that they're sort of where I was back in October, kind of going, wait, what is this? And trying to get them just to understand this is a thing. And I think from a graphic designer's perspective or brand builder's perspective, really the education is around how to offer this to your clients and what you can do, and how to speak about it. I was talking to a colleague a while back about Fiverr.com, and she was very, very upset because it was devaluing logo design and devaluing brand identity design. And I said, well, yeah, it is kind of, but it's your opportunity now to offer your clients something more. Instead of just coming up with a logo, come up with an entire brand ecosystem for them. And not just letterhead and not just business cards, because nobody uses that stuff. Come up with, everything else, an entire visual language for how they're going to express themselves, and not just in print. NFTs are going to be part of the brand matrix now that any good company is going to need. Besides just a logo and besides a website, you're going to need a plan for how you're going to create, how you're going to present yourself in the metaverse. That's important, and brands have to be designed around that. So that's the kind of thing I've been talking about with people. And also, the same printer I was just talking to said, I'm really worried that labels are going to become extinct. And I was like, whoa, that's possible. I don't think it is possible, but I was like that she's actually worried about that. So I'm saying, well, how do you fortify yourself against that potential inevitability? Something is going to take its place. What is that going to be? So that's the kind of stuff I've been talking about with friends.
You mentioned, like, is she meaning physical labels on products?
Yeah. She's saying, you may not need them because things get sold digitally now. And so say you buy your product or whatever wine and it doesn't necessarily have to come. If you ever purchase an Apple product, the packaging is all part of the experience, right? You get it and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. And they don't have boxes in the Apple store. They have the products, So I think that packaging itself probably will still remain, but I think it will shift a bit because there'll be a secondary experience to it. So you're going to open your beautiful box and there's going to be something in there that allows you to, scan it or whatever. And then you're going to get connected to a digital experience in which you mint your product or whatever online. And that'll be that whole circle. So designers have to think that way, I think, too.
Yeah, I liked how, when you're talking about the wine labels or the wine industry, I was almost thinking you buy an NFT and then that gives you access to certain events, like you said, but you're also saying like the wine bottle itself would be linked to an NFT, like the wine you actually purchase is on the blockchain.
Yeah.
And that's really cool to see. And what you mentioned with like RFIDs, everything can now be cataloged onto the blockchain ledger in a way that allows for a lot of transparency.
Yeah, and other people are talking about product, not quality control. Where you can actually, if something happened, you got a corked bottle of wine, a bad bottle of wine, and it is registered on the blockchain, and you can actually satisfy that client or that customer by giving them a new one to replace that with, and you can tell exactly which one and pinpoint the batch that it came from, and there's a huge potential, I think, there as well.
Yeah, that is really cool there. What sort of advice do you have for other artists and designers in the industry that are maybe just coming into it?
Do what you do. Do what you do, and present what you want to present, and haters are going to hate. It's so funny. We have like 190 people like a post, and then one person's like, this sucks. And I focus on them, but you can't do that. So just, be true, be original, and just put yourself out there. That's the advice that I have.
I would say that at the heart of it, we're all artists, and we've been kind of told that we're not a lot because there's so many incredible professionals out there doing it. But at the end of the day, we can all find that artist within us too.
You got to find your voice and do what you do. And again, I don't consider myself an illustrator. I don't consider myself an artist. I'm a graphic designer. And so what I'm doing is going to stay in my lane. And I have friends who are incredible artists, amazing typographers, incredible photographers, and what they do is just amazing to me. But I'm not them. I can work with them and bring them into projects or hire them to do things, but collaborate with them. But I really had to let go as I was doing CryptoCons, because I just had to allow myself to do what I wanted to do and not worry about the fact that I can't make it look like, like a Bored Ape, or I can't make it look like, something else. I just have to be who I am. And that's the advice I have that I give to companies when they hire me to create brands for them or do brand strategy. I just said, you have to be who you are. You can't be the next Google. You can't be the next Apple. You can't just be who you are and stay true to that. And that's, to me, I think that's advice that I give my kids just in terms of life in general.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're kind of just saying be authentic, which is, a very fuzzy word that gets tossed around a lot, and especially in like when you talk about NFT communities, and it's an authentic community. But I do really think that it is true that you don't try to be something that you're not, or try to replicate a project that's already been done. I mean, you said it too. You can get inspired, but I think that what you see do well in the NFT space, and in general in this new kind of metaverse digital world, is the weird stuff, the stuff that's really strange, and that people are like, wait, what? And then that's actually what makes people stop and grabs their attention, because crypto NFTs, it's really just a big attention game. And so if you're just like something else that already happened, then you're not really stopping people on their Instagram scroll or whatever and be like, oh, that's different. Let me explore that.
Absolutely. Totally.
Well, this has been a really good conversation. We're going to get just about wrap it up. We just have a couple more questions. We want to touch on just overall, like, how do you stay inspired as a designer, and what's inspiring you right now?
Well, it was tough. I was actually in the hospital a couple of years ago with a blood infection, and it almost killed me. So I did a lot of soul searching in the time I was in the hospital and as I was recovering from that. And I had lost my inspiration significantly right around that time. And I was just not excited about, I knew I was going to be a graphic designer, or what we used to we were called a commercial artist back then. I knew that I was going to do that when I was 11 years old, because I met a cool commercial artist, and he had this ultimate set of pens and a train set in his garage, and he was super cool. And I was like, that's what I want to do. It was hard to lose the motivation and to lose the inspiration. That was tough. I felt like it was like a death in the family. I wasn't excited about what I was doing. The way I have to stay motivated or inspired by looking at other work and being excited about what else is happening out there and the opportunities that they present. But like I said, NFTs have given me kind of, a new lease on life. I've been excited about it. And now I'm looking at cool things that other people are doing and going, wow, that's so neat. How could that inspire this wine label that I'm going to do next? Or how could that inspire this packaging design or the graphics for a live event I might be branding? and seeing what else is out there is really cool. It's not just looking on Behance or Dribble anymore. I'm now looking at OpenSea and just seeing cool stuff every day. That's how I'm staying inspired.
Awesome. Yeah. And we love that you're bringing people into the space, just like with the start of web, and you're going full circle now, bringing people into NFTs. And we're really excited about the crypto cones. I specifically love the Dare shirt reference of keeping kids on crypto. Thought that was great.
I was thinking about what to do. And actually my daughter has a Dare shirt from junior high or middle school. And I was like, oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, so good. So just remind our listeners, how can they get a little bit more info and get involved in the CryptoCones project and support you?
Yeah, so CryptoConesNFT.com, CryptoConesNFT.com. Just go to the website, and from there you can join our Discord or follow us on Twitter. But it's just easier to send you to the website itself because that's where you can get access to the other links.
Sweet. Anything else you want to tell our listeners before we sign off?
No, just thanks for this opportunity. I really appreciate it. Fun conversation, and it's going to be cool to see where all this goes.
Thank you so much for being on our podcast today. We appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about NFTs and hear about your journey. And we're really, really excited for your CryptoCones launch and to follow all the other things that you have going on in your NFT world that you're building.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave us a review.
We'd like to give a big thank you to our friend Matthew Patrick Donner, who's responsible for the Block Explorer production, including our music, mixing, and editing.
Thank you for exploring the world of blockchain with us. Crypto is changing the world. We're here to ensure that you're ready.
Please subscribe to our podcast and share it with your friends and family.
We look forward to sharing our next episode with you.
Cheers.
Cheers.